This begins Lecture 2, Week 2, focusing on the history, the definition, and the significance of social work supervision. I wish to make it very clear that when I speak in terms of social work supervision, I'm talking about supervision in the juvenile justice field in general, or the justice field, or the area of human services. I see them in terms of the process and the expectations as one and the same. In terms of the historical development of supervision, there were few and scattered references to supervision before 1920. The first book written on supervision and education and charity was written by Jeffrey R. Brackett in 1904. He was concerned in the supervision of welfare agencies and institutions by public boards and commissions. As the development of a literature of social work supervision began between 1920 and 1945, Family and then Social Casework published some 35 articles devoted to supervision. I ask you the question, what have been the different perspectives during this time frame? Take a moment and respond to this question. Supervision and group work in community organizations. Based on your understanding of the readings, what is supervision and group work? What is supervision in community organizations? As we begin to look at coming to a definition of supervision, we need to look at what does the word supervision mean? And it comes from the Latin word super, over, and videre, to watch, to see. So the supervisor is an individual who oversees or who watches over the work of another person for its quality. In developing a definition of supervision, we need to look at 5 different components. That is the functions, the objectives, the hierarchical position of supervision, supervision as an indirect service, and the interactional process of supervision. When we think in terms of the functions of supervision, we think in terms of the administrative process with the educational purpose. In other words, what is the supervisor's functions? What is the supervisor supposed to do when they make contact with the supervisee? As we look at the objectives of supervision, we look at both short-range and long-range objectives in the educational process of working with the supervisee. What is it that we want the supervisee to be able to do in the short term, and where is it that we want to see that individual grow to in the long term in terms of what is the ultimate goal that we want that person to accomplish with respect to clients or working with kids or working with other individuals based on the work that needs to be done. The hierarchical position of supervision looks at where does the supervisor fit in the structure of the organization. Is the supervisor a mid-level manager, or is the supervisor a frontline supervisor in terms of working at their particular position? For example, in my situation, I supervise several individuals. I supervise 7 individuals, and I report to the chief probation officer. And those individuals have others underneath them, other staff, other probation officers. So my people are a link pin within the organization in terms of working with frontline staff and then working with me as their supervisor, and then I have a supervisor too. So this is what we're talking about, with respect to the hierarchical level of the supervisor and where that individual is at. Supervision is an indirect service. Well, the supervisor is ultimately responsible for the work that needs to be done. And you as the supervisor or a future supervisor, those cases you must keep in mind belong to you. They don't belong to that staff person. And those cases don't belong to me. They belong to my boss, ultimately, because that's where the buck rests in the end. The interactional process of supervision deals with what is going on with that individual or with those individuals in terms of the beginning, the middle, and the end process in terms of supervising and the relationship piece in terms of getting along, with an individual. How do you interact, with that supervisee? Are you a mother figure, father figure? Is that person your child, or what is that interactional process? And Schulman, which we will be talking about later, gives a very good analogy and metaphor regarding that particular piece in terms of supervision. Okay, let's move on. So, as we define supervision, what Kadushin and Harkness tell us is that the supervisor is an agency administrative member to whom the authority is delegated to direct, coordinate, enhance, and evaluate on-the-job performance of the supervisees for whose work he or she is held accountable. Okay, so ultimately, the supervisor is held accountable for the work that the employee must do. And in meeting this responsibility, the supervisor performs three primary functions in working with people that we will be discussing. That is the administrative, the educational, and the supportive functions in that interaction with that individual. Most supervisors find themselves dealing very easily with the educational and the supportive function. It's the administrative function that becomes very difficult for us to manage and handle. The ultimate objective in supervision is to make sure that services are provided to clients and it's the best possible service, not just in a quantitative way, but a qualitative way per se. Okay, so that is the ultimate piece. Okay, as we look at this definition, okay, I think there is an error in here. And I want to make sure that you've picked up on this, all right, just to test your paying attention. But we do this in accordance with agency's policies and procedures, and we supervise, and we don't directly offer services to clients, we indirectly offer services to clients, and we want to make sure that those services are meeting the needs and that they're accomplishing what needs to be done. Okay, so this is at best how I can tell you what this process is about. In the next two slides, we have two application exercises. The first asks you to review the definition of supervision and respond to the two following questions. How would you apply this in the criminal or juvenile justice system, this definition? 2, what agency do you work at, and how have you or your agency used supervision? In the next slide, I'd like you to look at figure 1.1 in your textbook on page 27. How does this apply to you and your agency?